Hello and welcome to Maths with Jacob. This lesson will focus on quadrilaterals. In this video we will look at different types of quadrilaterals and the names given to them. We will also focus on some of the special characteristics for selected quadrilaterals. The first quadrilateral is one of the most recognizable of all, and it's called the square. And this is the reason we call it a square. Firstly, we have some green symbols here, and each of these green symbols represents a single stroke. That tells us that the four sides are equal. Secondly, we have these symbols here for the angles. That tells us that the four angles are right angles. And lastly, we have a single arrow there and there, a double arrow there and there. That tells us that the opposite sides are parallel, and that's why it's called a square. Over here we have a rectangle. There are some similar characteristics with the square. The only difference is that the opposite sides are equal. Only the opposite sides. So all four sides are not equal because they're single strokes and they're double strokes. And that's why it's called a rectangle, because the opposite sides are equal, but the four sides are not equal. For the rhombus, yes, we have four equal sides and the opposite sides are parallel because of the symbols. And that's why it's called a rhombus. For the parallelogram, we have the opposite sides are parallel because of those two symbols and because of those symbols. So that tells us the opposite sides are parallel. And it follows that the opposite sides are equal. So when you have that situation, that's called a parallelogram. The trapezium, we have those two sides there are parallel. Now, it's possible that those two sides can be equal in that instance, or they may not be equal. But as long as you have one pair of sides, a pair, that are parallel, then that is called a trapezium. For the kite, we have this particular situation where those two sides are equal and those two sides are equal, but they're different lengths. So that length and that length are not the same, but those two are equal and those two are equal. We also have two diagonals that are not equal in length, but they intersect at 90 degrees. When you have that situation, that's called a kite. And then we have the general quadrilateral, which is a closed four-sided shape, and that's really all you have. Now, we have some quadrilateral questions here, and we're asked to name the quadrilateral with the following characteristics. So when you read those characteristics very carefully, and you remember the information on the previous two slides, it becomes very evident that this is called a parallelogram. For number 2, if you read the information here very carefully, and you remember the information on the previous two slides that we talked about, this is a rectangle. And finally, this information here, read it carefully, gives you a rhombus. So this video has introduced us to the idea of quadrilaterals, and we've looked at different types of quadrilaterals, and we've also seen some characteristics. And if we go through the characteristics very carefully, it's very easy to see that there are different types of quadrilaterals, and their names depend on their characteristics.